to IAB There, our weekly live stream in which we connect the digital advertising ecosystem. I'm Jessalin Lam, the VP of Member Development here at the IAB and co-founder of Asians in Advertising. And in today's session, which is titled IAB Inclusion Institute presents Asians in Advertising, we'll be discussing as a culture the challenges that Asians face in the media industry, the lack of representation, especially in leadership roles, and the action we need to take to continue to break barriers. So with that being said, today, I'm excited to welcome you to the show, Bernice Chao, co-founder of Asians in Advertising and head of Integrated Creative of Zambezi, and Elizabeth Kim, board member of Asians in Advertising and art director of M-Booth. Let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about what you do and your role at Asians in Advertising. Bernice, let's kick it off to you.
Hi, thanks so much, Jessalin, for introducing me. I am the head of Integrated Creative at Zambezi, which is actually the largest female-owned full-service agency in the United States, and we're really proud of that. I personally work on Google L84 and Bridgestone, and as Jessalin mentioned earlier, I'm the co-founder of Asians in Advertising with her. This is an organization we started March of 2021, and now it has grown over to 2,500 members worldwide. So we're really excited about that. We've now hosted 16 events, which is incredible. We've been really busy, and we've been featured in some places like Forbes, South by Southwest, 3%, The Muse, and I just can not imagine where we're going to take it from here. I'm so excited, and I'm going to throw this over to Liz, who is an incredible board member for us.
Hi, I'm Liz Kim, and I'm currently an art director at M-Booth, where I currently specialize in data-driven 360 campaigns and brand work across multiple channels, like both digital and non-digital. I'm also a member of the board at Asians in Advertising, like Bernice and Jessalin said, where I support the organization through its nonprofit efforts in connecting AAPI members around the world for networking and industry advocacy.
Great, thank you to the both of you. And I'll have Bernice share a little bit more about what drove her to inspire and to also collaborate with me to create Asians in Advertising.
I kind of attribute the founding story to about 5 years ago, where I was at David and Goliath, an agency out in Los Angeles. And for the first time, I worked with, I think, 5 Asians. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have a whole crew for the first time. And so I was like, okay, this is our time. Let's start a group for ourselves. I saw where all the Black people are at. I started seeing groups for Latin America. And I just saw all these minority groups, and I was like so inspired to create a community for Asian people. And I started setting up meetings and having people kind of attend, and I started putting together a whole action plan. But after I think about 3 meetings, I saw that the enthusiasm kind of waned. And a lot of that was because I think culturally, as Asians, we're taught not to make space for ourselves. And so one of the feedbacks I got was maybe we're being too inclusive. Maybe we don't need this. And there's a lot of hesitancy, even though we saw the stats already. The Harvard Business Review article where it says Asians are the least likely to be promoted to managers above Hispanics and Blacks. And the percentage of Asians across media, I think it was something like 3%, even though there are so many Asian Americans in this country, and APAC is a huge buyer's market. So the idea got shelved, and it wasn't until during the Trump era where the xenophobia was kind of against Asian Americans was at an all-time high. And there was so many unprovoked acts of hate against Asian Americans that we kind of started seeing more Asian representation. A lot more groups, for example, like Adweek, created their first town hall for Asian Americans. And I was so stunned to see C-level Asians for the first time. Every time I talk about this moment, I tear up because I was like, oh my gosh, there's C-level Asians. I don't think I realized I couldn't be a C-level Asian until I saw other C-level Asians. And that need for community and representation meant so much to me. And so I started attending everything I could, one of them being Ascend, and that's where I met Jessalin. We actually met each other in the chat. where we're just like, hey, if you want to hit us up for virtual coffee, let's just reach out. And I met Jessalin. I was so emboldened by the fact of how passionate she was. She was a member in so many different communities. And I was like, I didn't even know these ad communities existed and how she wanted a change for Asians. And so, I mean, we didn't know each other in real life. I think we didn't meet each other until about 8 months later. But within 2 weeks, I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, I already have this URL for Agents in Advertising. She feels like the perfect can do partner. And so I created the website on a Saturday. She reviewed it on Sunday. We released it Monday with just one networking event, and over 600 people signed up. So for me, I was like, hey, if we could just help one person, hopefully 25 people. And when 600 people signed up, I was like, oh, I'm not alone. This is not just something the way I feel. A lot of people want this community. So, I mean, that's kind of our origin story. And I'm so glad we were able to connect, Jessalin.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know it definitely was for me. I said yes because it was a community we definitely needed, and I'd love for Liz for you to even share like how you got involved with Asians in advertising.
Yeah, so I joined the organization when Asians in Advertising was looking to expand their board members last year. I think it was like early last summer, actually. And at the time, there was and actually still is a lot of social injustices happening in our community that Bernice mentioned. And I was actively searching for a way to give back to our AAPI community. And the more I became involved, the more I realized the greatest value that Asians in Advertising really had was just to connect people together. So many people who I've met through Asians in Advertising have like come up to me and said that, oh, did you know at my agency I'm the only Asian person, or like even like, oh, I've never seen an Asian person in any senior leadership role, and like that kind of comments, when I hear that, I'm like taken aback because it truly hurts me that we live in, it's now 2022, and the lack of diversity and representation is still a huge topic of conversation that still needs to be had.
Yeah, I always say I've never worked for a woman of color.
Well, and that's why we're here to change that too. Where like so even the lack of roles with Asians in leadership, Asian Americans, we face a lot of barriers when it comes to leadership positions. And as Bernice even mentioned, it's the least likely group for us to be promoted from individual contributor to management. And even a study from Pacific Studies Center said that only 12.5% of Asian Americans have managerial roles. So there's definitely an absence when it comes to influential leadership roles for Asians. And I wanted to pass this over to Liz. I know we've talked about how the diversity pool has gotten lower as the job levels get higher. And then when you first started your career, you mentioned that you saw Asians in entry level and mid level, but as you started to climb the ranks, even in your career, you saw less leadership and in senior level roles. So can you share a little bit more about your experience and why you think that is?
Yeah, so I think I was very fortunate to have started my career by going to a very diverse art school. I graduated from Pratt Institute, where the diversity of the students, especially in the department that I studied in, skewed mostly Asians. So I was used to being surrounded by Asian creatives. And as I entered the job market as like a freshly graduate, I was excited to see that a lot of my peers looked like me, Asian. But as years went by, I started climbing up the ranks. I noticed a lot of my peers started to look less and less like me. And it only hit me recently when I was starting to grow my personal team at my office and saw that the pool of applicants varied immensely from entry level to mid level and then to senior level. And what I saw was that there was a really big group of diversity and talented creatives at the entry level position, but as the roles got higher, there was less and less diversity. And it truly made me question, where is the diversity? Where are the Asians? Where are the people of color? Why are there not enough of it at the top? And I know and I understand that the world is not perfect right now and it's ever changing. But as a woman of color, I will always prioritize diversity and inclusion and hope that as I also rise, and like eventually hit C suite myself, I will be able to keep that door open for the future generation of potential diverse leaders.
I love that. And Bernice, did you want to share your experience too?
Yeah, I feel like my experience echoes a lot of other Asian Americans. There are so many cultural barriers and biases to advancement, but of course, I didn't realize this at the time. Like I didn't notice these things were happening to me and the people around me. Like, Liz was saying that she was kind of seeing this happen. I think mine was a little bit more in like retrospect, like I always give the example of the two proverbs in America. We say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. In my culture, which is Chinese, we say the loudest duck gets shot. So you can kind of see how fundamentally we're totally set up differently in the workplace. We're not taught as Asian Americans, or at least in my culture, to speak up for ourselves. And when we do, we can get in trouble. We can get fired, we can get called out, we can be unliked, or, kind of get flagged. And so it took me a long time to realize that my voice needed to be heard. It needed to be heard in loud groups, in meeting rooms. I had to speak up as much as I could because people aren't going to just look at me and go, okay, that's a manager, that's a leader, that's someone that has amazing thoughts inside their head. They're just not ready to share it in a big group. So, there was a time where I was at a job and I didn't get promoted for about 5 years, even though I was outperforming my peers. I would show up at reviews with all the measurements of how I was like the best video this year, how I totally blew the brief and expanded on it, and how I made like this incredible piece of work. And they kind of just was like, oh, that's great, we'll see. And they kind of kept dangling the carrot. And this is something we hear with other API where it's like, oh, you did the work, it's great, but you're not a leader. And so, this is something that, as Asians in advertising, we're really trying to champion, kind of those moments where it's like, okay, maybe it's time to move, or, what else can you do to kind of advocate for yourself? This is like we're trying to just get all the strategies together, all the help we can to kind of lift each other up.
I love that. I mean, I've experienced that too. I mean, I remember in a performance review, I had a manager say to me, "You don't want to be that Asian who doesn't speak up." And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I already speak up in meetings. I was like, but they just say that because they think stereotype of Asians. And so, like, even in addition to like speaking up, it's also like authenticity in the workplace is really important. So I wanted to make sure we talk about that too, because it's a really critical ingredient when it comes to relating to the success of creating inclusive work environments and making sure that people have that sense of belonging with the community. And so for Bernice, I wanted her to share with Asians in advertising. I know community is one of our core pillars. So could you share a little bit more about like how our nonprofit is engaging and really getting the Asian community more involved?
So, I want to announce that we're having the first AAPI Summit that's tailored specifically to AAPI. This is happening May 5th and 6th. We have two amazing keynote speakers, Cindy Gallup, who's a legend, the co-founders of Stop AAPI Hate, who's made tremendous progress for AAPI. This is incredible. We have such an incredible lineup. I'm going to shout out a couple of names here. Anne Christine of Ad Age, Tina Yip of Strategist, Cassandra Lamb of the Cosmos, um, Jerry of Dear Asian Americans, Dan Matthews of 3AM. I mean, it's a list of all these incredible people of talent that I was so excited to meet because of the level of representation. And we just want to disrupt. We want to basically help where we can, show the representation, show that we're building community. This is for people to advocate for themselves, for allies to understand, and just give everybody the tools. We are so grateful for the lack of sponsorship we had for so many agencies. We're going to use all this funding to basically help create scholarships to really close that advancement gap. So definitely check it out. Tickets are asiansinadvertising.com, and we hope that you can join.
Great. And Liz, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think like just echoing what Bernie said, Breaking Barriers is truly the first summit of its kind. We're so excited for it. I know I'm truly excited for it. I know we're all speaking or moderating and just participating in some form or of another. I think on top of all the sponsorships that Bernie's mentioned, we also have a lot of partnerships, and that those partnerships are so important to us because it's helping us bridge our community that we have together. And it's been so monumental to have them, to know that we have people backing us up and the efforts that we're doing. I know you can find all that information on our website, agentsandadvertising.com. And I'm actually also preparing something, a little gift to all the attendants that are coming to the summit. It's going to be a little digital guide to help all the attendees know a little bit more about the speakers, all the great sponsorships and partnerships, and really just help tie our community together.
And you're creating a virtual goodie bag, right?
Yes, there's going to be a little surprise gift at the end for all our attendees and speakers, which I'm really, really excited about as well, too.
Yeah, Liz did an amazing job of reaching out to AAPI founders and owners to really amplify, the products that they're creating to really just further support the community. We're just trying to bridge the gap in all the different places. So sponsorship, partnerships, speakers, communities, and of course, creators and makers and company owners.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, like I know it, Bernice and Jessalin, like Asians in advertising started as Asians and then just advertising, combining the two. But I really think in the 1 year that it has been around, it's really grown beyond that. There are so many, it's not just advertising. I think one time you were saying there were like people in finance interested in the summit. I know I'm getting friends and family who are not in advertising very curious about it, wanting to attend. So it's really, and even just allyship. And you don't have to be Asian to attend, I think, is a big thing. And I think it's a testament that there is a lack of space for these kind of conversations that exist in the workplace or professionally. And Asians and advertising is giving that space for those people.
Yeah, I think on LinkedIn it said that our pie was like 48% of people in advertising, media, communications. So you can see that the majority are not in advertising, which is really neat. We had an in-person event in Los Angeles, and I got to meet people in tech, health, real estate. Liz mentioned finance, but it was like really surprising to see that the community out there is really looking for a place to gather.
But thanks for sharing that. So yeah, I'm definitely really excited for this as our first virtual summit. And a lot of it is even just focusing on professional development for our community. So it's really the first of its kind that we've seen, which is why we wanted to create that, to provide that, to elevate our community. And I wanted to move on to talk about even corporate responsibility of like what employers can do. So we know that extending platforms like Asians in advertising for Asian voices is important year round, and not just a one-time thing, whether it's just around an Asian holiday or during Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Like organizations within the industry, they really need to focus on long-term sustainable solutions. So let's talk about how they can do that when it comes to internal and external efforts. So I'll pass it on to Bernice. What can you share for steps that even Asians in advertising have taken to help organizations with this?
Well, first part, we kind of came out with resources. So if you go to our website, we have a whole section. We have monthly resources. We have just thought leadership pieces as well. That's a great place to find information, how you can be an ally, how you can advocate, who's doing what out there, what charities to support. Then we've kind of taken it to a new level where we're actually speaking on a lot of different groups. So allies in recruiting, that was a great place for us to meet, recruiters in, I don't even know, like 30, 40, 50 different agencies. And we're just talking about our purpose and kind of just bring it to top of mind. And so, on top of that, we've been speaking in a lot of different agencies for Lunar New Year and for APAM month coming up. I think we have about like 10 of those. So we're just trying to get our message out there. But going forward, we really want to be the industry standard. We want to be there for leadership, for resources, and really to track how we're moving forward. How can we really improve with measurable stats? We are planning to team up with a couple of different nonprofit resources to make sure that we're really keeping track and providing those stats to agencies.
Great. And then for Liz, what has your own company done to address this, and what exactly do you think they should do more of?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I'm very fortunate that the creative department I work at Booth is probably one of the most diverse groups of people I've ever worked with. And we have so many amazing, talented people from all different backgrounds. And I genuinely want to say that this is probably why we're so successful as a team. Everyone brings their personal experiences and their history to the table, which helps creativity grow. And I think if more companies want to grow progressively, they truly need to rethink the way they hire new talent at all levels, not just entry levels. And you need to diversify your team and bring in a group of people that doesn't reflect what you see in the mirror. And I think that's one of the key ways to just expand what you know and how you grow.
Great. And I wanted to close our conversation by talking about action. So, what are some of the action items that you've taken, and what can the larger community do to help?
Yeah, I think I'll go first. I think it all comes down to support. Like, if you yourself are not an AAPI person or a person of color, you need to take action with support. Support your DEI community at work, support outside organizations like Asian in Advertising, and attend monumental events like our Breaking Barriers event on May 5th and 6th. I think that's the only way you put yourself in a position where you are accepting and understanding the feedback of others and listening to other stories that's not your own. And I think more importantly, and probably the easiest thing to do, is probably also to local support your local AAPI small businesses. Bernice gave a little teaser on the gift bag goodie that we were preparing for the summit, but it ties closely with our local AAPI small businesses.
That's so great. I mean, echoing what Liz just said, not only did she put together a virtual goodie bag that has these businesses, she also did it for Lunar New Year, and Google reposted that, which is really cool that they also are supporting. People are seeing this change that we're putting forth, which is really cool. And, what Liz mentioned, mentor, give back, pull forward, maybe someone in your network you can reach out to as an agent to show that the representation there is there. Maybe you mentor someone on your team that you didn't originally gravitate towards because they didn't look like you, and you pull that person forward. In terms of additional resources, I mentioned the links on our website. We also have a YouTube page with all our previous talks recorded, including a networking event by Jessalin, which is an amazing event. I was like taking notes the whole time. We also have a podcast where we interview, amazing talent that we're actually going to record the next season soon. So if anyone's interested in becoming a guest, they can totally reach out to us. And lastly, what we realize is this is not just for Asians in advertising. This is something that Jess and I realized, and we just want to collect all this information. So we want to put this in something completely digestible, someplace where people can kind of go back and reference. And so we're publishing a book. This will be out November 2022, hopefully. We have a publisher that's going to be releasing this. It sounds like across the world right now. So you'll be able to find it at your local bookstore, your Amazon, or your small business bookstore. This is called The Visibility Mindset: How Asian Leaders Create Opportunities and Push Past Barriers. Each chapter of 12 chapters is an actionable step so that you can really gain visibility for yourself, so you can be seen as a leader and really move up. We're so excited about this. It's a complete passion project. And, this is something we hope to have as a lasting resource.
Great. So thank you, Bernice and Liz, for participating today. This was a really exciting conversation, and it flew by really fast. So for all the viewers and listeners out there, visit agentsinadvertising.com. Feel free to connect with any of us on LinkedIn to stay in touch. And I'm Jessalin Lam. Thank you for tuning in today.
Thanks for having us, Jessalin. This was so much fun. Thank you, Ivy.